This is Murderous Minors, Killer Kids, bringing you the frightening and truly insane tales of children with the thirst to kill. Kindergarten through 12th grade murderers. True stories thoroughly researched. Join us weekly for new tales of parents' worst nightmares on Murderous Minors, Killer Kids. Episode number 3, Yellow Ribbons for Maddie. According to Sheila Clifton, it was an ordinary day. That day was November 3rd, 1998, and it would turn out to be a day that would irrevocably change the lives of two families, their community of Jacksonville, Florida, and gain national attention for the next 2 decades. The Lakewood area of Jacksonville was considered a safe, family-friendly environment. Steve and Sheila Clifton had lived there for over a decade and were raising 2 active daughters, 11-year-old Jessica and 8-year-old Madeline. Jessie and Maddie were students at San Jose Catholic, a religious institution whose foundations were laid by Sheila's family. The Cliftons were a close-knit, loving group whose lives revolved around their daughter's various activities, as well as a shared love of the outdoors with constant fishing and camping as a foursome. Jessie and Maddie enjoyed activities like basketball, piano lessons, gymnastics, and dance. Once chores, homework, and piano practice were completed, the pair looked forward to playing outside with their neighborhood friends until called in for dinner. So simple and so common in what seems now like a safer, more innocent time. Chores for that Tuesday, November 3rd, 1998, consisted of taking down and properly storing the family's Halloween decorations. 8-year-old Maddie Clifton completed her responsibilities first that day, leaving her big sister Jessie inside finishing up. It is about 4:30 p.m. In the meantime, Sheila Clifton arrives home from work and she sees and speaks to Maddie before she heads outside, like normal. Not long after, Maddie comes back inside in search of a particular blue golf ball, as a group of kids has assembled down the road to take turns chipping. She's instructed to search the border grass of their yard as Sheila begins to prepare the family's dinner. Jessie recalled jokingly asking Maddie to stop distracting her so she can complete her task and go play outside too. Sheila recalled grabbing her youngest daughter by both cheeks and giving her a kiss, telling her to be safe and have fun, never realizing she wouldn't see her alive again. When it's time for dinner, Maddie can't be found. Jessie did eventually go out to play that day, but reports to Sheila that she didn't see Maddie at all and they were never together. She'd figured that her little sister and best friend had resumed chipping golf balls at the end of the street, but she hadn't had a reason to go check. Now that dinner was done, Maddie was nowhere to be seen and was not answering her mother and older sister's calls. In a panic, Sheila begins going door to door while Jessie hops on her bike and begins to search. At a house diagonally across from the Cliftons, 14-year-old Joshua Patrick Earl Phillips responds to Sheila's questioning at his front door, promptly says he will help look, and grabs a flashlight. His father is heard asking in the background, "Who's Maddie?" Sheila is frantic, and neighborhood kids and parents start really looking around for her. The authorities are called, and Maddie's father, Steve Clifton, arrives home shortly thereafter to a chaotic, confusing scene. Josh Phillips was by all accounts a nice, normal boy. At this time, nothing really made him a person of interest at all, although he would end up being interviewed multiple times over the next week. The Phillips family, Missy, Steve, and Josh, had lived in Lakewood, Florida for about 2 years, having moved there from Pennsylvania. It was widely reported that Josh's father, Steve Phillips, was a domineering man of 6'6" who ruled his house with a stern hand. He employed very specific rules which prohibited friends in the house or playing outside after school. Josh considered himself to be isolated and reclusive. There would be mention of substance abuse. Domestic abuse was also evident. Missy Phillips was said to have suffered from depression. Josh fed his solitude by spending time with pets like his birds and beagle, along with copious amounts of screen time in the new digital world. Energetic 8-year-old Maddie, the younger of the Clifton sisters, would remain missing for a week. 7 horrible, confusing days, which saw the initial reward offered double to $100,000. A week which saw a neighbor suspected due to multiple allegations of sexual assault a decade or so earlier. This neighbor would fail a polygraph examination in relation to Maddie's disappearance, but would be cleared by a solid alibi. Investigators locked down the neighborhood for days, feeling pretty secure that Maddie would be located somewhere on her own block. Steve Clifton would recall that he felt that he and Sheila were under suspicion. He remembered seeing camouflaged officers positioned in the woods behind his house. Sheriff Nat Glover would say in a later press conference that the whole neighborhood was under surveillance for days should a perpetrator attempt to remove evidence, or Maddie, from the area. He could not risk it. Under suspicion or not, the Clifton family continued their unceasing cooperation with authorities while making every public plea they could to keep this story at the forefront of the local news. The disappearance of the Cliftons' beloved baby girl stimulated a nerve in this community. The Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as much of the city, wore yellow ribbons to keep the search for Maddie at the center of the city's attention. Strangers, family members, and neighbors, including Josh, somehow kept up the frenzied search, which continuously yielded nothing. Sheila Clifton would later say when interviewed that it was as if Maddie had gone out the door to play and simply vanished. It was on the following Tuesday that the search would slam to a dumbfounding end. Missy Phillips is reported to have gone into her son Josh's bedroom on the morning of Tuesday, November 10th, to clean it up. Some reports indicated that she smelled something foul, but she does not specifically ever say this in any of her taped interviews. Whatever the case may be, she entered and upon noticing wet carpet at the base of Josh's waterbed, began to take the bed apart. Maddie Clifton's little feet, clad in white ankle socks, became visible. In horror and disbelief, Missy alerts the officer patrolling the neighborhood to come with her, and where she reveals her heartbreaking discovery. Maddie's dead body, in her house, under the bed where her 14-year-old boy has slept for the past 7 nights. Josh Phillips is picked up from school and transported to the police department for questioning. His father is there for the questioning, although Missy says she wasn't allowed in, as officers told her the interrogation room was too small for all of them. Law enforcement descend on the Phillips home, cordoning it off in that telltale way which means nothing good. Yellow ribbons of hope had become that yellow crime scene tape we dread. Over at the Cliftons, the somber tone of investigators made it pretty clear that they had news and it wasn't good. Even before they were sat down on their living room couch, the air told the truth. Jessie, who at 11 years old was being shielded from much of the chaos, had been mostly cloistered at her grandma's house around the corner. On this Tuesday morning, she's upstairs with the officer who's acting as her victim's right advocate when that officer's summoned downstairs via radio and she doesn't return. Jesse eventually ventures down and encounters scores of friends, detectives, and family members, teary-eyed and tense. It is then that she learns that her little sister Maddie is dead. While 14-year-old Josh Phillips is being questioned in custody, investigators begin the unenviable task of processing the scene of what was, undoubtedly, Maddie Clifton's murder. They find her body, shirt pulled up, naked from the waist down except for socks, stuffed under Josh's waterbed, entombed, Sheriff Glover would describe. It would later be determined that no sexual assault was evident or could be proven. Upon interview the day Maddie was found, Josh's statement was that Maddie came to his door and asked him to come out and play, even though they both knew he wasn't allowed. He goes, and subsequently hits her with a baseball while they're playing, resulting in a gash on her face. She is screaming and crying, so he brings her inside, panicked because his father is due to arrive home at any minute. Josh says that, to stop her crying, he hits her in the head 3 times with a baseball bat and puts her in a large empty cavity in the base of his waterbed. Maddie is still moaning, loud enough that, after Steve Phillips arrives home from work, Josh gets Maddie out and stabs her so that his dad doesn't hear. He doesn't want to get in trouble for having a friend over. Once she is again securely hidden in the bed frame, Josh uses tape to seal the base up, making it essentially Maddie's coffin. Police then arrest Josh and officially charge him with first-degree murder as an adult. Searching his room yields extensive evidence, though it answers none of the questions people now have, especially why. No one could know that to this day in 2017. Not even Josh could adequately provide a clear answer as to why killing Maddie would be better than getting in trouble for regular, normal childhood behavior. His logic on that fateful day does not make sense to the presumably fully evolved adult brain. But what about to that of a child with fear and other emotions involved? It is now widely accepted knowledge that brains continue to develop until about 25 years of age, but this was not known in the late 90s. The tools Josh described as his murder weapons were still in his room, along with some other damning evidence. The baseball bat and the Leatherman multi-purpose tool with the knife were there, as were multiple rolls of tape. Febreze, incense, and other forms of air freshener were also found. Clothes had been piled around the area of the bed frame where Maddie's body lay, and a birdcage and dog kennel had a week's worth of waste inside, a likely ploy to confuse the nose as to the source of the ever-growing stench. Taped to Josh's headboard was a missing flyer for Maddie. Even more shockingly, there was a crumpled picture of Jesse Clifton on his nightstand, a picture which had gone missing at some point from inside the Clifton home. An empty picture frame still existed there. 14-year-old Josh Phillips' interrogation was not recorded or taped in any way, nor were both parents present. He did not sign a confession at that time, but did confess in graphic detail to his actions. Josh goes on to admit responsibility for the murder at varying intervals over the next 19 years, but to this day will not or cannot explicitly voice why this tragedy occurred. Richard Nichols was retained as Josh's defense attorney, and he presented a peculiar defense. He literally called no witnesses, not Josh, not any medical experts or psychologists, not character witnesses or even his parents. The fact that Josh murdered Maddie Clifton was not what this trial